They will tell you that goodness is strength, that kindness builds trust, that mercy is the highest form of power. But Machiavelli would disagree. He knew the truth most people cannot bear to face. Goodness is only powerful when it is rare, controlled, and calculated. Unleash it freely, and it becomes a weapon in the hands of others used against you, turned into chains of guilt, expectation, and weakness. In a world that rewards predators, goodness without strategy is not noble, it is fatal. Every society praises goodness, but Machiavelli saw what most could not. Goodness is often nothing more than a mask. Behind the smile of generosity can hide ambition. Behind the hand of mercy can lurk a sharpened knife. He warned that those who show goodness without measure are not admired, but tested. To the cunning eye, a kind heart is not protection, it is opportunity. When you walk into a room known for kindness, you have already declared that you will forgive before the blow lands, that you will tolerate insult before raising your voice, that you will extend mercy even when it is undeserved. This does not disarm your enemies, it emboldens them. They will praise you for your goodness in public and strip you bare in private, knowing you will not fight. Machiavelli understood that goodness becomes a stage costume worn by those who wish to hide their real intention. The priest who speaks of charity may crave control. The ruler who pardons may buy loyalty for a single day, only to face rebellion tomorrow. And the ordinary man who makes himself a saint to his friends will soon find himself drained, despised, and discarded. To survive, one must see goodness as performance, not truth. Show it when it wins you leverage. Withhold it when it leaves you exposed. Because in the end, goodness is not what they tell you at Island. It is a mask, and masks are worn for manipulation, never for safety. Kindness, once displayed too openly, is not seen as virtue but as vulnerability. And Machiavelli knew that vulnerability does not attract loyalty but wolves. A man known for his unshakable goodness becomes the easiest prey because everyone learns that he will never bare his teeth. The first time you forgive an insult, they watch. The second time, they test you again. By the third, they no longer fear you, they expect you to kneel. In this way, goodness becomes a weakness that invites attack, a signal flare to every opportunist waiting for someone soft enough to consume. The wolf does not stalk the strong, it hunts the sheep. And in the same way, predators in human form do not waste their energy on those who resist. They seek out the ones who wear their kindness like a lantern in the dark. To be good without strategy is to walk into the forest bleeding. Every favor given, every apology offered, every concession made is another drop of blood in the water. People will not pity you. They will circle you. The danger lies in the fact that weakness, dressed as goodness, is rarely recognized by the one wearing it. The kind man believes his patience will inspire loyalty, that his forgiveness will melt cruelty, that his selflessness will be repaid. But Machiavelli saw centuries of history that proved the opposite. Those who lead with kindness are repaid not with devotion, but with betrayal, because human nature admires strength far more than it values virtue. The wolves of the world do not love you for your mercy. They love you for the ease with which they can devour you. To survive, you must learn what others have already discovered. Goodness is safest when it is hidden behind strength. Let them see your hand close into a fist before you offer it as an open palm. Make your kindness a choice, not a guarantee. Wolves do not attack when they suspect the sheep has fangs. But once they smell that you will never strike, they will not only come for you, they will bring others to join the feast. This is the brutal lesson Machiavelli demanded his prince learn. Weakness, disguised as goodness, does not earn you peace. It invites the hunt. Guilt is the silent leash that keeps the good man bound. And Machiavelli understood that it is more effective than iron shackles. When someone learns that you carry guilt easily, they do not need to command you. You will command yourself. You will replay conversations in your mind, wondering if you said too much, if you were too harsh, if you should have been more generous, more patient, more forgiving. This self-interrogation is not noble. It is enslavement. It drains the will until action feels dangerous and silence feels safe. The world is full of people who know how to use this. They will remind you of what you owe them, exaggerate your mistakes, or imply that you have wounded them in ways you never intended. They understand that guilt shapes behavior more effectively than gratitude ever could. Gratitude fades. Guilt lingers. It becomes the invisible chain dragging you back into compliance every time you think about resisting. Machiavelli warned that those who lead with goodness become prisoners of this very chain. The prince who spares a traitor once will forever be haunted by the possibility of seeming cruel if he refuses a second time. The man who forgives too easily will be reminded of it at every turn, each appeal crafted to prick his conscience and keep him pliant. To those who exploit, guilt is a tool sharper than a blade. What makes it so dangerous is that it works in silence. No one has to shout at you or threaten you. You will do the work yourself, carrying their burden as if it were your own. A single phrase, "I thought you were better than this," is often enough to tighten the chain around your neck. And so you bend, you yield, you obey. But Machiavelli taught that survival requires learning to sever this chain before it locks into place. Guilt has no place in strategy. It serves no one except those who exploit it. The strong understand that every act of goodness should be deliberate, not accidental. If you help, do it because it benefits you. If you forgive, do it because it buys you time. And if you walk away, do it without apology. Otherwise, you will find that guilt has made you loyal not to your own path, but to the demands of everyone who claims a piece of you. To carry guilt as a chain is to live bowed in service to wolves who know exactly how to keep you crawling. The cruel truth is this: the world does not admire the man who feels guilty. It only admires the man who cannot be controlled by it. Every act of goodness seems like a gift at first, but Machiavelli knew that gifts rarely stay gifts for long. In the minds of others, they transform into debts, silent contracts that never expire. The meal you bought once becomes an expectation that you will always pay. The favor you granted turns into a permanent obligation to keep granting more. What begins as gratitude curdles into entitlement, and soon the good man finds himself trapped in an endless cycle of repayment he never agreed to. This is the cruel truth of human memory. People forget what they receive, but they never forget what they expect. Each time you give, you raise the bar, and once the bar is raised, lowering it feels like betrayal. You may think you are winning loyalty with generosity, but what you are really winning is a heavier chain around your neck. The more you give freely, the less your gift is seen as extraordinary. It becomes ordinary, a baseline, a duty you are expected to fulfill. And when you finally withhold, when exhaustion pushes you to say no, you are not met with understanding. You are met with outrage. They call you selfish. They accuse you of changing. They remind you of every time you gave before, not as proof of your kindness, but as evidence of the debt they believe you still owe. Machiavelli saw rulers fall because of this. The merciful prince who pardoned once was expected to pardon always. The generous lord who opened his coffers one winter was expected to keep them open every year, until generosity drained his strength and fed the resentment of those who wanted even more. In this way, goodness becomes a trap disguised as virtue. The endless debtor is not respected. He is consumed. To survive, one must learn that generosity only has power when it is scarce, when it is given not as obligation, but as strategy. A gift must serve as a move on the board, not as a habit. A favor must bind the receiver to you, not bind you to them. And once the exchange is complete, the account must be closed with no further claim. The man who learns this truth will never be enslaved by the debt that never ends. But the man who continues to give freely, hoping his kindness will one day be enough, will discover that the appetite of others has no bottom. They will not stop until he is emptied, and even then they will curse him for not having more to give. Machiavelli would have called it folly. We call it goodness. But in the eyes of the wolves, it is nothing but weakness waiting to be devoured. Gratitude is spoken of as if it were a virtue, but Machiavelli knew it often rots into something far darker. At first, those who benefit from your kindness may shower you with thanks, but gratitude is a shallow currency. It shines brightly when the gift is fresh, then fades into resentment when the giving does not continue. The good man believes gratitude will protect him, that those he has helped will remember his sacrifices with loyalty. But memory does not work that way. Gratitude becomes expectation, and expectation turns into tyranny. Once people grow used to your goodness, they begin to demand it. The thank you fades into silence, then the silence into entitlement, and soon even the smallest refusal is seen as betrayal. In this way, the very kindness you thought would bind people to you becomes the rope they use to pull you down. Gratitude is tyrannical because it never stays in the heart. It migrates to the mouth, where it becomes complaint the moment your generosity falters. The man who fed his people yesterday is hated for not feeding them today. The friend who forgave once is cursed when he refuses the second time. The ruler who spared an enemy is despised when he finally draws the blade. Gratitude does not grow stronger with repetition, it decays. Machiavelli warned that those who rely on it are fools, because gratitude is fickle, fragile, and fatally unstable. People admire strength long after they resent kindness. They will follow the man who inspires fear more faithfully than the one who inspires gratitude, because fear is constant, while gratitude is fleeting. The tyranny of gratitude lies in the way it rewrites the contract. You thought you gave freely, but they believed you signed a lifetime obligation. Your name becomes chained to their demands, your reputation used against you. To withhold kindness after giving it too freely is to watch those you served turn on you with sharper fury than if you had never given at all. The escape lies in learning to control gratitude before it controls you. Let your goodness be rare, like water in the desert, so that its value cannot be mistaken. Let your favors be conditional, tied to loyalty and obedience, not offered without thought. Let your mercy be sharp, a blade hidden in velvet, so that those who receive it know they stand in your debt rather than you standing in theirs. For Machiavelli, the brutal truth was clear. A man ruled by the tyranny of gratitude is already undone. Only the man who governs it, who turns gratitude into leverage instead of debt, can hold power without being consumed by the very people he sought to please. Mercy is praised as the highest form of goodness, but Machiavelli saw it for what it truly becomes when handled without caution, a weapon turned back on the one who wields it. The merciful man believes he wins loyalty by sparing others, but in truth he only teaches them that betrayal has no cost. An enemy pardoned once will test you again, not out of gratitude, but out of certainty that your heart is softer than your hand. In sparing him, you have told the world that treachery can be survived, that disobedience carries no final consequence. This is not strength, it is an invitation. And so mercy becomes sharpened not by those who receive it, but by those who exploit it. They learn to sin without fear, to trespass without dread, because the man who prides himself on his mercy will always find a way to excuse them. Machiavelli knew history was written in blood spilled by rulers who mistook mercy for power. Empires crumbled because their leaders spared traitors who returned stronger, hungrier, more determined to strike again. The people do not revere the merciful ruler. They test him until his kingdom falls. The same principle governs ordinary lives. The worker who forgives every slight will find his labor stolen. The friend who excuses every insult will become the group's scapegoat. The lover who pardons every betrayal will live shackled to humiliation. Mercy, given without measure, is not compassion, it is surrender. The cruel irony is that the merciful man thinks himself noble while others whisper of his weakness. Machiavelli advised that mercy should be rare, deliberate, and always paired with fear. If you forgive, do it in a way that leaves the offender trembling with the knowledge that your patience is not infinite, that the blade could fall at any moment should they test you again. True mercy is not the refusal to punish, but the calculated decision to delay punishment until it serves you. This is the difference between mercy as a virtue and mercy as a weapon in your own hands. Used recklessly, it destroys you. Used strategically, it makes others cautious, uncertain, unwilling to gamble against your restraint. Machiavelli's brutal lesson is this: mercy without boundaries does not create peace, it creates predators. To wield it with power, you must let them feel the edge of the sword even as you choose not to strike. Otherwise, the weapon of mercy will never be yours. It will belong to those who know you cannot bring yourself to use it. Goodness in the world is rarely what it seems, and Machiavelli understood that it functions less as virtue and more as theatre. People do not parade their kindness because it is genuine. They parade it because it buys them influence. The noble gesture is often nothing more than a stage act, rehearsed for applause, designed to mask the cold calculations running beneath the surface. The priest who speaks of charity builds his own power by collecting devotion. The politician who forgives an enemy in public does it not out of mercy, but because it makes him appear larger, magnanimous, untouchable. Even in ordinary life, the neighbor who cannot stop reminding everyone of his good deeds is not good at all, he is advertising. Goodness becomes currency when it is displayed under the right light, a performance that convinces others of one's morality while concealing the ambition behind it. Machiavelli warned that those who mistake these performances for truth are the easiest to manipulate. They fall prey to the illusion, believing they have found allies, when in reality they have stepped into the audience of someone else's play. The danger for the genuinely good man is even greater. He thinks his goodness speaks for itself, that his quiet acts will earn recognition, but the stage is dominated by performers who play louder, brighter, more theatrically. His quiet truth is drowned out by their spectacle, and soon he is forgotten, even despised, because he did not sell his goodness convincingly. In a world ruled by perception, unseen goodness counts for nothing. Machiavelli would say that if one must be good, one must also be skilled at wearing goodness like a costume. It must be donned at the right moments, in the right rooms, when it can win the greatest advantage. Offstage, one may act with cold pragmatism, but on stage, Goodness must gleam. The key is control, because the performer who never steps out of costume eventually loses himself in the role, and the world takes advantage of him as surely as it does the naive saint. The mask must be yours to remove, not theirs to tear away. This is the essence of strategic goodness, not sincerity, but mastery of performance. For Machiavelli, there was no shame in this, only survival. To survive, one must understand that the world is a theatre, and those who do not perform are destined to be played. Better to step into the light knowingly, to use the stage as your own weapon, than to be consumed by those who understand that goodness is not truth but spectacle. Morality is spoken of as if it were freedom, as if it elevates a man above the chaos of cruelty. But Machiavelli knew that morality often works as a cage. The one who binds himself too tightly to rules of goodness, fairness, or forgiveness soon discovers that these chains do not restrain the world, they restrain him. The enemy who has no rules will always outmaneuver the man who refuses to step outside his own. It begins subtly. You are told that lying is always wrong, so you refuse to deceive even when deception would save you. You are told that anger is unworthy, so you swallow it even when it could have protected you. You are told that mercy is noble, so you extend it even to those who are sharpening their knives. The morality you cling to feels like virtue, but to the ruthless, it is simply a map of your limits, a visible cage they can push against until it cracks. Once they learn the boundaries you will never cross, they can move freely, attacking you in ways you cannot answer. To them, you are not strong but predictable. Machiavelli warned that predictability is fatal. The moral man thinks he is admired, but the crowd admires him only until he becomes irrelevant. History shows that those who cling to morality as absolute law are devoured by those who treat morality as a tool. The merciless rise because they are unbound, while the moral fall because they are trapped in cages they built themselves. The cruelty is that morality promises peace, but delivers weakness. It convinces you that to break the rule is to break yourself, and so you remain inside the bars even when the door is wide open. Machiavelli advised that morality must never be treated as iron, but as wax, something that can be bent, reshaped, and hardened when it serves your survival. He knew that a ruler who lives too strictly by moral laws is not virtuous but doomed, for the world does not reward consistency, it rewards cunning. The lesson is not to abandon morality, but to hold it loosely, to recognize it as a weapon when needed, and a costume when convenient. To be trapped by it is to become prey, admired for your goodness only until you are destroyed by those who never pretended to care. The cage is not built by the world. It is built by your refusal to see that morality, when worshipped, becomes your own prison. Machiavelli's brutal truth is this: better to bend morality and survive than to be caged by it and fall. Silence is often mistaken for passivity, but Machiavelli understood it as one of the most dangerous weapons a man can wield. Where words can betray you, silence conceals. Where explanations expose weakness, silence creates mystery. The man who speaks too quickly, who rushes to justify, who spills his intentions freely, is a man who teaches others how to control him. But the one who answers with nothing forces the room to bend around his stillness. In silence, people begin to wonder. They replay their words. They search your face. They stumble over their own uncertainty. Silence makes them project their fears onto you, and what they imagine is often darker than anything you could have said. This is why silence inspires respect more than kindness ever does. Kindness is predictable, but silence is dangerous. It leaves others unsure of your boundaries, unsure of whether they have overstepped, unsure of whether your patience hides forgiveness or a delayed strike. And uncertainty is more powerful than reassurance. Machiavelli knew that the rulers who survived longest were those who did not waste words. A measured silence gave them the air of strength, even when their power was fragile. In the courts of princes and kings, silence could cut deeper than cruelty, because it denied the flatterer or the rival the one thing they needed: certainty. The same truth governs ordinary life. The worker who refuses to rise to provocation commands more authority than the one who shouts. The friend who listens without rushing to defend himself gains more influence than the one who insists on explaining. The rival who stares without answering creates more fear than the one who argues. Silence is not emptiness, it is pressure, it is presence, it is the shadow of something larger than words. But silence must be deliberate. To stay quiet because you are afraid is not power, it is submission. To stay quiet because you choose to is dominance. The difference lies in control. Machiavelli would urge you to remember that silence buys time, and time is the most valuable resource in conflict. Time allows you to observe, to calculate, to let your opponent reveal himself while you remain unreadable. To wield silence properly is to weaponize absence, to make your refusal to speak echo louder than speech. In the cold advantage of silence lies a brutal lesson. Words will bind you, but silence will keep you free. Speak only when your voice can tip the scales. Otherwise, let the weight of your silence remind them that you are not to be handled, not to be predicted, and never to be dismissed. Loyalty is celebrated as the strongest bond between people, yet Machiavelli saw that it is often inverted, twisted, and turned into something dangerous. The good man believes loyalty is earned through kindness, through generosity, through the steady hand of forgiveness, but this belief blinds him to a harsher truth. People are not loyal to goodness. They are loyal to strength, to advantage, to the fear of loss. When your goodness makes you predictable, when your patience makes you weak, loyalty does not deepen, it dissolves. Those you serve with your endless giving will turn against you the moment they see more power in another. And worse, they will justify their betrayal by pointing to your very goodness, claiming you were too soft to lead, too naive to follow, too weak to deserve their allegiance. In this inversion, loyalty is not the reward of kindness, but the punishment for it. Your efforts to bind others with gratitude only serve to tie you to them, while they remain free to cut the rope whenever ambition calls. Machiavelli saw rulers undone by this mistake. Princes who believed their mercy would buy eternal loyalty found themselves abandoned when war arrived, their former allies defecting to the side of the ruthless conqueror. History teaches the same lesson again and again. Loyalty is not inspired by goodness, but enforced by power. Even in common life, the same pattern unfolds. The friend who swears eternal devotion walks away when standing beside you becomes costly. The partner who praised your patience betrays you when a sharper presence captures their attention. The colleague you helped repeatedly will side against you if your weakness threatens their gain. And yet, the man who inspires fear or commands respect finds loyalty far more enduring, because people cling to what they fear to lose. The inversion of loyalty is this brutal reality. The more you rely on goodness to keep people near, the more quickly they will scatter when tested. The more you allow yourself to believe that kindness guarantees allegiance, the more you will be shocked when those you carried on your shoulders step off and leave you to the fall. Machiavelli warned that to survive, one must never confuse loyalty with affection. True loyalty is forged when others see their survival linked to yours, when they recognize that leaving you is more dangerous than staying. The good man who cannot create that fear, who cannot inspire that recognition, will forever mistake dependence for devotion and end up betrayed by both. Better to be respected than loved, better to be feared than pitied, for only then does loyalty cease to be illusion and become a chain that binds others to you rather than binding you helplessly to them. History is filled with corpses of men who believed that goodness alone could shield them, and Machiavelli studied those failures with ruthless precision. He saw rulers who mistook mercy for strength, who believed generosity would quiet rebellion, who convinced themselves that fairness would be returned with loyalty. Yet century after century, the pattern repeated itself. The merciful prince was overthrown. The generous king bankrupted his throne. The fair ruler was betrayed by those he treated most fairly. The brutal lesson of history is that goodness without calculation never survives, because human nature does not reward it. A people spared one day will rise against their ruler the next, seeing mercy not as proof of greatness, but as proof of softness. An army paid well one season will demand more the next, treating generosity as obligation rather than gift. A rival forgiven once will sharpen his knife twice as eagerly, emboldened by the knowledge that you hesitate to strike. Goodness is remembered only until ambition whispers in the ears of those you protected. Fear, however, is remembered longer. Machiavelli knew that Caesar was murdered not despite his favours, but because of them. He knew that countless kings were abandoned by their subjects who praised their kindness yet deserted them when enemies marched through the gates. Even in the private corners of life, the same law holds. The man who relies on fairness in business is cheated by partners who see only profit. The friend who relies on forgiveness is drained by companions who treat him as a bottomless well. The leader who relies on love is betrayed by followers who find love insufficient when power is at stake. History does not honor those who die with clean hands. It honors those who survive, even if their hands are stained. This is the reality Machiavelli forced his prince to confront. To rule by goodness alone is to invite destruction, and to expect gratitude for it is to misunderstand the very core of human behavior. Men will praise goodness with their lips while conspiring against it in their hearts, because survival outweighs virtue every time. The lesson is brutal because it strips away illusion. It forces us to see that the stories we are told, that kindness will be rewarded, that mercy will be remembered, that justice will guarantee loyalty, are myths designed to control the weak. The survivors of history were those who could be good when it suited them, and ruthless when it did not. Those who refuse to learn this truth are remembered only as martyrs of their own naivety. Machiavelli's warning is simple yet merciless. If you rely on goodness, you will fall. If you rely on strength, you may stand. And only those who stand have the privilege of writing the history others must read. Goodness by itself is fragile, but Machiavelli taught that it can be transformed into power if it is sharpened into strategy. The mistake of most men is that they give freely, blindly, believing that kindness will create loyalty. But loyalty born from obligation is thin, and loyalty born from gratitude is thinner still. To wield goodness as power, one must treat it not as a constant, but as a weapon that appears and disappears at will. A calculated gift is far more potent than 1,000 unmeasured ones. When you choose the right moment to show mercy, it binds the receiver not with gratitude but with debt. When you extend generosity only when it strengthens your position, It makes others aware that their survival depends on you. Goodness, in this sense, must always carry a shadow, for it is only respected when paired with the unspoken knowledge that it can be withdrawn or turned to cruelty. The ruler who feeds his people 1 year gains adoration, but the ruler who reminds them he can withhold that food gains control. The man who forgives once earns thanks, but the man who forgives sparingly earns fear of losing that forgiveness. To turn goodness into power is to make it scarce, deliberate, and always conditional. It is the difference between a well that anyone can drink from and a fountain whose key only you hold. Machiavelli warned that too much goodness dissolves into weakness, but rare goodness becomes unforgettable. People remember the single act that saved them in a crisis, and they will cling to you because of it. They will not remember a lifetime of easy kindness, for that becomes invisible, expected, forgotten. The secret is to make your goodness an event rather than a habit. In war, spare an enemy only if his survival secures your strength. In peace, show generosity only when it cements allegiance. In life, forgive only when it leaves the other chained more tightly to you. In this way, your goodness is not wasted, it is weaponized. The world respects what is controlled, not what is given without limit. Power lies not in being known as good, but in being known as someone who can be good when he chooses, and merciless when he must. The unpredictability makes others cautious, forces them to measure their words, binds them with uncertainty. This is how goodness, which destroys so many, can instead serve survival. Machiavelli's lesson is cold but enduring. Goodness should never be free. It must always be bartered, always balanced against the threat of its absence. Only then does it cease to be a weakness and become what it was always meant to be, a tool, a mask, a weapon, and ultimately a throne on which power can sit securely. The world praises kindness in speeches and scriptures, but Machiavelli looked past the praise to the ruins it left behind. He saw rulers, generals, and ordinary men destroyed, not because they were cruel, but because they were too kind, too trusting, too unwilling to wield power without apology. Kindness is remembered only while it is useful. Once it no longer serves others, it is erased, rewritten, or even mocked as weakness. The brutal truth is that kindness does not outlive the moment it evaporates. The instant survival or ambition demands its sacrifice. What does endure is the rule Machiavelli set forth. Never be good for its own sake. Be good only when it strengthens your position. And never mistake goodness for safety. A man who lives by this rule will be called ruthless, cold, perhaps even heartless, but he will not be discarded, like those who built their lives on blind generosity. The rule that outlives kindness is not about rejecting humanity, but about refusing to be enslaved by it. When you give, give to bind. When you forgive, forgive to control. When you show mercy, do it so that others fear the day you choose not to. In this way, your goodness leaves a mark that cannot be erased, because it is fused with power, and power is remembered long after affection fades. Look at history and you will see this truth. The leaders revered centuries later are not those who poured out endless kindness, but those who mastered the balance of fear and generosity, those whose mercy was as rare as it was unforgettable. Their names remain not because they were good, but because they were strong enough to decide when to be good. The rest are footnotes, forgotten martyrs of their own ideals. Even in the smallest circles of life, the same law rules. The man who never says no will be discarded as soon as he falters. The man who gives endlessly will be cursed when he cannot give more. But the one who controls his goodness, who makes it scarce, strategic, and sharp, becomes the figure others orbit, fearing the cold as much as they value the warmth. Machiavelli's final lesson is not that goodness has no place, but that it has no permanence unless it is fused with calculation. Kindness will fade, mercy will be forgotten, generosity will be consumed. But the rule of power, the rule that goodness must always serve strategy, will outlive them all. To live by it is to ensure you are never remembered as the victim of your own virtue, but as the master of it, the one who chose when to open his hand and when to close his fist. That is the rule that endures long after kindness is gone. If this brutal truth struck you, remember power is a game of perception, and silence, strength, and strategy always outweigh blind virtue. For more lessons that uncover the cold strategies of Machiavelli, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter in this series.